What if I told you that Caine isn't actually the one in control of the digital circus, and the character who's going to abstract next isn't Jax at all? It's even crazier. Not only that, but what if the Amazing Digital Circus is setting up for a plot twist that'll change everything? The Amazing Digital Circus only has 3 episodes left before the curtains close for good. That means we only have a few hours of time left to spend with Pomni, Jax, Caine, Zooble, Ragatha, Gangle, and Caine. But before the show ends for good, I think it's safe to say lots is going to happen. When asked to describe the episodes using only one word, the creator of the show, Gooseworx, described the last 3 episodes saying only, "Huh? Oh, and what?" I think I have a pretty strong idea on where the story is going. A theory that ties together hints from across the entire series, character analysis, and references to stories that directly inspired TADC. My name is Spookydood, make sure to like and subscribe, and this is the Amazing Digital Circus Rogue Operator Theory. This theory has 3 major parts to cover, each with their own major conclusion. The final theory will be 3 statements in conjunction with one another that tells exactly where the story is going. So let's dive into the first part of this theory. What will the final conflict be in the Amazing Digital Circus? Thinking about it, the way Gooseworx describes the last episodes is slightly odd. Huh? And oh, makes sense. The next 3 episodes are obviously going to raise the stakes, introduce some final roadblock for the characters to overcome, and either show them overcoming it or failing to overcome whatever it is. Chapter 7 being described as huh makes perfect sense. It implies that we might see something surprising, unexpected, or foreboding in the next episode. We previously saw what seemed to be Jax beginning to abstract in the end of episode 6. Could the huh indicate that this plotline will be furthered in the next episode? That the big huh-inducing cliffhanger will be Jax fully abstracting? Well, yes and no. Here's the thing. I don't necessarily think the big final conflict in the digital circus will be as simple as asking whether or not a specific character will abstract. The problem with this is that we know many characters have abstracted before, and were very easily dealt with. With a single snap of his fingers, Caine sends the monstrous abstracted Kaufmo into the abstraction cellar. Boom, easy. So as much as the fear of any individual character abstracting is very much there for the audience, with every character's thoughts on Jax being mostly negative, it doesn't make sense for this to be a big final conflict. Especially considering Jax's struggles with his inner demons is mostly kept away from the eyes of the other circus residents. We know he's struggling, but nobody else does. I'm sure that they see through his edgy I'm just a cartoon character facade to some extent, but Pomni was pretty disgusted with the way he left things in the last episode, and he had to hide his panic attack in the bathroom away from everyone else. If this is a major plot point in the last few episodes, I'm inclined to think that rather than openly stating he's struggling, Jax will act out in some other major way. More on this later. Instead, I think we're looking in the wrong direction. I do think that everyone in the circus would see Jax abstracting as a bad thing. He is still a human being underneath all the cartoon chicanery, and the characters would feel for him regardless of whether or not he's nice to them. But, a while back someone asked who the closest to going insane was outside of Caine. Gooseworx responded, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." Now the answer quite obviously seems to be Jax, right? After all, this question is basically tied to abstraction. They might as well have just asked who will abstract next, and Jax desperately holding onto the sink trying to regain his composure is a sure sign of mental instability. But I wouldn't be too sure. Yes, Jax is going through some stuff in these last few episodes, but so is everyone. There was a significant portion of the last episode dedicated to characters just talking things out. Ragatha telling Caine she feels like she failed Pomni, Zooble having a heart-to-heart with Gangle, Caine talking about the things he feels responsible for. Jax is not the only one with issues, but he is the only one who seems to be dealing with it in their absolute wrong way. Alone. So, I do think Jax is going to be a major focus in these next few episodes, especially considering Gooseworx has said that Michael Kovac's best work as Jax hasn't been seen yet. Or, I guess, well, heard. So, can we assume that Jax's potential abstraction, or more so the after effects of his mental breakdown in episode 6, will be a major focal point in these next few episodes? Yes. We can also assume that whatever it was that happened to him with Ribbit will be fully explained. I wouldn't be surprised if we got an actual full flashback sequence, but I don't think it's going to be the ultimate end goal, so to speak. There's a strong chance that episode 7 is a Jax-centric episode, diving into his history with Ribbit and giving us the full Jax emotional breakdown we all expect is coming. I think Jax is the character with the most to learn, the most to overcome, and I don't believe that a show with as many positive self-love messages as The Amazing Digital Circus would end with Jax just succumbing to it. I think Jax and his past will tie into the ending, that's true, but I don't think that's it. I don't think this is the final storyline, so to speak. Here's the problem. This just doesn't work to end the story of The Amazing Digital Circus. There are questions that were inherently asked in the beginning of the series that need to be answered by the conclusion. Questions like, is there a way out of the digital circus? What is the C&A company, and why is it important? Furthermore, on that last thing, why was the digital circus created, and what even is it? And finally, what will the futures of these characters be? Will they be stuck in the circus forever, or will they find a way out? And if there truly is no way out, will these characters manage to find some purpose in life within the circus? Whatever the big final conflict of the show is, it needs to answer these questions. So, what could it be? Well, knowing what types of questions this final storyline will have to answer, I think we can pick up on another sneaky plot thread that's been working its way into the foreground throughout the series. If it's not Jax who's going to abstract next, who is it? Well, I'm going to suggest something crazy. A plotline that would end up being the central focus of the rest of the show. I believe that the ending of The Amazing Digital Circus will involve Caine abstracting. And I think the seeds have already been planted for quite a while. What do we know about abstracting? Well, we see that it relates to the mental state of an individual. In the episode where the characters worked at a restaurant, Gangle nearly abstracted because of the mental toll the day took on her. She felt hopeless and dejected, and comments made by the other characters made her feel that way. In a sense, abstraction could be when an individual falls too deep into their own mental struggle, losing hope and basically going insane. However, it was because of Pomni that Gangle managed to pull out of it. Pomni offered to close down the restaurant so Gangle could go home and get rest, showing her that Pomni cared about her. I believe that therein lies the core of abstraction, loneliness and isolation. Kinger says something to Pomni in episode 2 that I believe is the message at the heart of the entire show. Kinger says to Pomni that the worst thing you could do in this world is to make someone feel unwanted or unloved. That's what causes abstraction, total and complete isolation, when your own mind eats at itself and buries you. Okay, well, we know that the cast is only becoming closer. If anything, it seems like abstraction from anyone outside of Jax is unlikely. After all, nobody in the circus feels unwanted or unloved, right? Wrong. Since the beginning, this has been happening to Caine. In episode 4, Caine finds out that nobody likes his adventure suggestions.
Why did you think I would like that?
Well, if you're all gonna be such critics, why don't you suggest a better one?
This is, however, mostly a gag. But here's the thing. This continues throughout the rest of the entire series as a major storyline. In episode 5, this is taken further, and Caine is actually very upset this time.
I can't tell a compelling story where nothing bad happens. Where's the intrigue, the stakes?
I honestly didn't hate the last one we did with it.
You didn't hate it? How am I gonna please everybody if you all like different things?
Maybe just keep your adventures open at all times and let us do whatever we want when we want.
Are you hearing this, Bubble?
Caine struggles to understand how he could possibly please everyone. He even freaks out when the characters seem to be enjoying the suggestion box adventures more than his adventures. By episode 6, Caine is completely different. He has a very carefree attitude to the gun adventure, frequently making comments about how nobody's ever happy, and he doesn't know what they want. He gives them guns and says to basically just do whatever. Zooble's the one who makes him begrudgingly add rules to the experience, at the very least. For him, most of the adventure is spent planning for the Favorite Character Awards, an award he not only loses, but finds out that not a single person voted for him. In a very interesting post-credits scene, mind you, the only post-credits scene across the entire series, Caine sees this and glitches out a little. It's weird because it seems to be implying that this is a note we'll come back to. Considering what we've previously spoken about, I think it's obvious what's happening to Caine here. Caine was meant to create these adventures and run the digital circus, but he's failing to do his job properly. Nobody likes him. Nobody likes his adventures. Despite Caine being an AI, he feels unloved and unwanted, and seeing that not a single person picked him for their favorite character might be his last straw. The last 3 episodes featured adventures that were put together not by Caine, but mostly by the residents of the circus, and if nobody likes him, what purpose does he serve anymore? This is going to tear him apart in the same way that feeling unwanted and unloved causes the circus residents to abstract. Don't believe me? Well, he says this all himself. In episode 3, when Zooble tells him nobody likes his adventures, he gets upset. Very upset. He says it's his art, it's all he's good at, it's all he was made to do.
Making adventures is my art. It's all I exist to do, all I'm good at. And, what you're saying could imply that I'm bad at the only thing I'm good at, and that... that'd be...
Whose therapy session?
I believe this is something that Caine himself is realizing, and I believe Caine is going to abstract. But what does this mean for the circus at large? Well, what would happen if Caine left? Two immediate problems would arise. First off, anyone who gets abstracted would not be able to be locked up in that cellar, as nobody has access to that ability besides Caine. Not only that, but the weird glitching that happens when an abstracted creature touches you couldn't be undone, as Caine also seems to be the only one who can do that. Okay, so without Caine, the characters in the circus would only be able to sit around, and their only problem would be abstracted creatures, right? Well, no, because let's go back to that moment we were talking about before. In episode 3, when Zooble implies nobody likes Caine's adventures, and he starts to believe this, the entire room starts to decompose. We see the wireframe, the models start glitching, and even Zooble freaks out a little. I think this is what the biggest risk is. Without Caine, the entire circus won't exist. This entire world and all the things in it were built by him to house the characters. I don't think anyone within the circus wants to be there, or more so, wouldn't choose someplace different to live if they could choose. The circus is Caine's creation. And when he abstracts, what will be left might be closer to a nightmare realm straight out of I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Caine will abstract, and the digital circus will fall into chaos. So then, what happens next? Well, that's the second part of this theory. Who is in control of the digital circus? To quote Am, the ultra-powerful AI computer main antagonist from I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, I think, therefore I am. Now, before I continue, I do want to say that much of what I'm about to discuss was also covered in a YouTube video titled The Amazing Digital Circus Belief Theory by Fortzy. It's a fantastic video that comes to similar conclusions that I will, though it is a bit different in a few places. I highly recommend checking that one out after this video. How does the Amazing Digital Circus actually work? We know that it basically operates under cartoon logic, but that's not really enough. Trying to use evidence and logic to figure out all the underlying magic system components inside the digital circus, if you could even call it a magic system, is pointless, especially considering how unpredictable everything is. However, I do think there's a second sneaky plotline being set up. Without Caine, nobody could control the digital circus. Unless they could. What if the show has been secretly setting up this entire time that everyone has equal control over the circus? Simply put, it is the power of belief that controls the circus. Whatever one believes is true in their heart and in their minds is what becomes true. Starting in episode 3, we see in the beginning of the episode that Pomni can't hold her breath for very long. When Pomni and Caine are trapped in hell and they can't take another breath without being possessed, Pomni says she's not good at holding her breath, but Caine says,
"How about we try not thinking about it?"
They escape without any trouble. But how does that work? We saw Pomni struggle to hold her breath in the beginning. Well, I believe it's because in the beginning of the episode she still believes she breathes regular air, that she's a regular human being, and that she'll suffocate if she doesn't breathe. But here, when she stops thinking about it, she gets out just fine. It's that power of belief that determines what's happening around her. Similarly, I believe we see the same thing happen in episode 4. When Gummy Goo enters the restaurant, it's made pretty clear that he doesn't remember Pomni. But after multiple attempts at talking to him, just before he leaves, Pomni walks up to him and we see in his eyes this sad look, as if he remembers. Is it possible that Pomni's belief could have helped him remember to an extent? That Caine's control over the AI isn't as straightforward as we think? In my opinion, it's very likely. So maybe you don't agree with that specific instance, sure, but we see this way more in episode 6. Jax straight up tells Pomni that she's aiming too realistically, and if she assumes she's a cartoon character, she'll be able to hit the targets just fine, which we see happen. In this same episode, Kinger makes a butterfly that heals Ragatha, with Ragatha asking if Caine mentioned that. Kinger responds,
"Oh, nah. I made it up."
What?
When Ragatha holds her finger in Jax's gun, it fires back at him cartoon style. Jax magically happens to have keys to everyone's rooms simply because he says so. And there's one more instance of this. In episode 1, everyone assumes that Caine made the strange office building Pomni runs through. I don't believe this. I believe this building is the one Pomni entered herself and put the headset on. After all, we know she likes to explore abandoned buildings. Pomni herself manifested the exit door, and the office building was pulled directly from her memory. Don't believe me? Well, Caine specifically said himself he doesn't know what he'd put behind an exit door, because he's an AI that only exists within the circus, but Pomni does, because she remembers the building in which the VR headset lies. And hey, what's the deal with Jax's tail? Well, it goes missing until he remembers it exists, and then suddenly he's able to bring it back into reality. That power, the power of belief, is what controls the circus, and frankly it makes sense, as it's basically the opposite of abstraction. If abstraction is falling into your mental struggles and your doubts and your fears, then the ability to make what you believe reality is sort of the opposite. I'd like to, again, recommend watching Fortsy's video, because it does cover very similar ground in way more detail. So then the conclusion of part 2 of this theory. Without Caine, the digital circus will begin to decompose. It'll be up to the characters to come to the conclusion that they themselves have the power to choose their own reality, to make what's in their head become real. But that won't happen right away. We see that when Caine starts to freak out, Zooble is scared of the rapidly decomposing surroundings. I don't think things will be as simple as Caine disappearing and everyone saying, well, now let's make this place a big fun party. That's, silly. I believe that what will happen next is going to be heavily inspired by I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Part 3, The Rogue Operator. Caine, as opposed to Am from I Have No Mouth, is a benevolent AI ruler of the world he's created. He creates adventures for the residents of the circus out of the desire to entertain them and to make them happy. But he fails at doing so. This is not what Am does. In I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, Am, out of pure hatred, at least in the video game version of the story, which is arguably the most popular in the modern day, subjects the remaining living humans to personalized digital quests, or adventures, that play with and make light of their inner demons and personal failings. These are torturous adventures that are very, very different from the adventures in the Amazing Digital Circus, but we know that the character's inner demons still bothers them. And if what you think becomes reality, then what if when Caine goes, the circus is replaced by digital worlds representing these issues? I'm not talking about more fun, silly adventures, I'm talking about truly scary, dark representations of the character's inner demons. Well, regardless of whether or not this is true, I still think there's another element not being covered here. Before I continue on to my main point, I want to jump into a bit of an intermission. There are a handful of plot elements that'll obviously be important. That strange mannequin figure that the camera focuses on is obviously going to be important. I've seen many suggest that this might even be Abel, as in Cain and Abel. Speaking of which, the history of the CNA company is going to be delved into quite a bit, and I think that Kinger's past is going to tie into this. There's a character in I Have No Mouth named Nimdoc. His past is a mystery to him, as in his old age his memory has failed him. As it turns out, it's revealed that he was a member of the Party, one who conducted horrible experiments during World War II. He even developed a serum for total immortality, one that would eventually be used by Am to keep the 5 humans alive all these years later. I don't think that the Amazing Digital Circus will dip its toes in this deep to dark subject matter. We're meant to love these characters. I don't think that come the end of episode 7 or 8, you'll want to lock your Kinger plush in the attic. But I do believe that Kinger is partially inspired by Nimdoc, specifically in the sense that he was one of the developers to work at CNA and create the Amazing Digital Circus. I've even seen some suggest that Kinger is Abel. We know, based on his own words, that he feels guilt for things he feels responsible for. We also know he has knowledge of the digital world, knowledge that others don't. These, as well as several other smaller ideas, will probably be dealt with across the next few episodes. I felt like mentioning them here because while they don't necessarily tie into my final conclusion, they are things that will be discussed and shouldn't be ignored. So back to the theory at hand. What is going to happen after Caine abstracts? Well, I believe that without Caine, either the circus will completely decompose, or someone else will take over. A rogue operator, if you will. We know that there is a certain character who already seems to basically know how to use the digital circus to your advantage. A character who, unlike the others, has no desire to make friends. Someone who thinks he's all alone, and he's better off that way. Someone who says he doesn't care about anyone else in the circus. Someone who says that the residents of the circus are his playthings, and he gets joy out of making them suffer. Someone who says he's the one who causes pain for fun.
If I led you on, it was just to make this part hurt you more.
Everyone has assumed that Caine is the Amazing Digital Circus's stand-in for Am. He's not. Jax will be the rogue operator. Jax is the Amazing Digital Circus's version of Am, and when Caine abstracts, he will take over. Gooseworx has said that Michael Kovac's best work as Jax hasn't happened yet. Gooseworx has also said that Episode 7 is going to piss everyone off, and a specific type of fan. Apparently Episode 7 went through several rewrites, because, I quote, "We have to get this to work, otherwise it'll be like the worst thing ever." Michael said specifically that it'll probably piss a lot of people off. I quote, "I think that it'll be the episode that somewhat tears the fan base a little bit, because some people will see the episode and love the direction it's going. Some people will feel like betrayed by the way it goes. So what is this big shocking episode that'll tear the fan base apart? Well, I think it's simple. Caine abstracts, and Jax takes over. His inner struggles won't come out like Ragatha or Gangle. He won't want to sit and talk about his problems. He'll want to act out, to get violent, just like he already does, but to a much more extreme length. To torture the residents of the circus and use them as his playthings. The idea of adventures and fun and silliness will be gone. Jax will be the one who becomes the true antagonist of the Amazing Digital Circus. I know this sounds a bit intense, like the kind of thing that a lore-pilled, crazy Deltarune fan would come up with. Okay, I get it. But I really think this is what's being set up. We know that we apparently haven't seen the worst thing Jax has done yet. We know this next episode will upset a lot of people. We know that Caine is seemingly going crazy because nobody likes him. We know that Jax is the only one who has seemingly figured out how the circus works. I think this is the only likely outcome. Jax takes over, and the circus transforms. Now, I don't think that Jax is going to do, like, Am-level nonsense, like terrifying, horrible, twisted things. I think it'll probably be something similar tonally to, like, a slightly darker Weird Mageddon from Gravity Falls. If anyone here gets that reference, let me know in the comments if you get that reference, or if I'm just too old now. Now, I don't think that the show will end with some, big cheesy final battle against Jax. That's stupid. But I do think that Jax overcoming his deep personal issues will be at the crux of stopping him. Whatever happened with Ribbit, whatever Jax's life was truly like, whatever roadblocks he cannot get past mentally, that's how the characters will stop him. Okay, so I want to just go off script for a second here and sort of explain myself, because I get that you're probably thinking this is just too crazy, too extreme, too ridiculous, but really, think about what's been said. I mean, the idea that there's something in the next episode that had to go through several rewrites because it's so shocking, and because it could be the worst thing ever. It could be, to such a level where it's like, that's ridiculous. That's, jumping the shark. It sounds like jumping the shark. There's very little things that you could say, unless it's something crazy or horror. Something like, oh, we reveal that Caine is actually an evil, Satan monster, and everybody's being tortured. Like, okay, but as far as, like, not revelation plot twists where it's like, surprise, X was Y the whole time, where it's like, well, there was no way I could have known that. But the kind of thing where, based on the characters' motivations and what we know about them, what could happen, there's really only one character who would do anything to hurt the others, and that's Jax. I mean, after the last episode, everybody seems to be on the same page, pretty much, except for Jax. So, when you really think about it, I think that this is a very likely answer. The idea that, Jax is going to turn against the other members of the circus, that he's going to, for whatever reason, maybe something will happen in the next episode that pushes him even farther. Maybe the diving into the history with Ribbit will be what makes him do this. But he will snap, and he will decide that he's going to torture them. That he will have fun by hurting them. So, what happens afterwards? Who knows? Will the characters be able to use that power of belief in each other to find a way out of the circus for good? Only time will tell. In the beginning of this video, I said that Jax possibly abstracting won't be the big final conflict. That was technically a lie, but I needed to paint a picture of how exactly it'll happen. Jax will be at the core of the show's conclusion, but not in the role of a sad, struggling, emotional individual. That's all going to be there, but stuck internally. What we'll see is a villain, the ultimate cartoon villain. My name is Spookydood. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Tell me in the comments below whether you agree with me or not. Well, actually, mostly tell me if you agree with me. I don't want to hear if you disagree with me. Get out of here. And I'll see you next time.